everyone, welcome to the fall semester exam review. We are going to do questions 1 through 10 in this video. So let's go ahead and get started with question number 1. So in question number 1, you need to read the story at the top before looking at the actual recipe. So it said that Jen, Lee, and Sarah decided to make a pancake breakfast for 6 people. Okay, so let's underline things that may be important. That doesn't necessarily mean it is important, but we're going to look to see if it is. They found a recipe that will make 12 silver dollar pancakes, and we see that here, that this makes 12 pancakes. They need to make 30 silver dollar pancakes, so each person gets 5. So they want to make a total of 30. How much of each ingredient will they need to make 30 silver dollar pancakes? So the way I think about this is that one recipe is going to make 12 pancakes. 2 recipes, I'm just call it 2R, is going to make 24 pancakes. And 3 recipes is going to make 36 pancakes. So 3 recipes is too much. You'll have extra left over. So if you think about it, half of this recipe is going to give me 6 pancakes. So if you think about 2 and a half, 2 gives me 24, the half gives me a 6. That gives me exactly 30 pancakes. So they are going to make this recipe 2.5 times, and we need to find the ingredients. So first, let's find the flour. So we know that flour is 1 1/4 cups for one recipe, but we need it 2.5 times. So we are going to have to multiply this by 2.5. Well, we've talked about to multiply mixed numbers, we need to make them improper. So 1 times 4 is 4, plus that 1 is 5, gives me 5/4 times 2 times 2 is 4, plus the 1 is 5, so you get 5/2. And if we multiply that straight across, we get 25/8. But that is improper, so we simplify it. 8 goes into 25 3 times, with 1/8 left over, because 8 times 3 is 24, and you subtract the 24 from the 25. So for flour, it's 3 1/8. So the egg's pretty easy. Okay, so egg would just be 1 times 2.5, which gives us 2.5 eggs. But someone said, well, you can't do 2.5 eggs. You're right. So they are going to need 3 eggs for this. There won't be one similar to this on the test, but just so you know, you cannot have half of an egg. Okay, so we've did the flour, we've done the egg, so we've done a whole number. Let's do the baking powder, so BP for baking powder. So for baking powder, you have 3 teaspoons times the 2.5. So once again, change them to improper, 3/1 times the 5/2, which gives you 15/2, which simplifies. 2 can go into 15 7 times, which is 14, which leaves you with a half left over. So you would have 7.5 teaspoons. Okay, and let's do one more. Let's do the 3/4 cups of milk. And I'll leave you with the rest to do on your own, because this one problem is taking a long time. So for the milk, you would do 3/4, let's write that better, 3/4 times the 2.5, but you would still need to make it improper, so 3/4 times 5/2, which gives me 15/8, which simplifies. 8 goes into 15 one time, so you have 1 7/8 of a cup of milk. So you still need to try these other ones, the salt, the tablespoons of salad oil, the sugar, but I've done 4 examples for you. Okay, question number 2. Paul has 3/5 of a roll of speaker wire. His sister uses 1/4 of it to set up the speakers in her room. How much of the whole roll of speaker wire did Paul's sisters use? Well, first we have to think she used 1/4 of the 3/5. So he had 3/5 of the whole amount, and she used 1/4 of that. And when we are talking about fractions, and they're talking about 1/4 of an amount, that means they're going to multiply this by 1/4. which gives 3/20. So she used 3/20 of the wire. And it says, what fraction of the whole roll is left? So he only had 3/5. And left means we're going to subtract. But we have to remember when we're subtracting fractions, we have to have a common denominator. Well, 3/20 cannot be simplified, so we're going to have to scale up the 3/5. So 5 can actually change also to a 20 by multiplying this by 4. So I would also need to multiply the numerator by 4, which gives me 12. So we have 12/20 minus 3/20, which gives us 9/20 of the wire is left over. Okay, in the next question, it says 3 groups of students are sharing leftover pizza. They all were the same original size. In which group does each student get the most pizza? Explain your choice. So this first one says 6 students equally share 3/4 of a pizza. Well, when you see equally share, division should pop in your mind. Okay, so 6 students are getting that. So we should be thinking 3/4 divided by 6. Well, we know that we need to change 6 to improper. So that would be 6/1. And then when we're dividing fractions, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal, or our little quick reminder is copy dot flip. So which would give us 3/24. So they would get 3/24 of that pizza. So this is for the first group. Okay, the next group says 3 students equally share 1/3. So they're getting 1/3 of the pizza divided by 3. Once again, make the 3 improper, and then we're going to do multiply by the reciprocal, or copy dot flip. So 1/3 times 1/3 equals 1/9. And actually, we could have simplified the 3/24 because 3 goes into that. I just realized that. So this becomes 1/8. So the first one's 1/8, the second one's 1/9, and the last group is 4 students equally share 2/3. So 2/3 divided by 4, and we're going to say 4/1, multiply by the reciprocal, 2/3 times 1/4, which gives me 2/12, which if we simplify that is 1/6. And you're wanting to find the one that has the greatest piece. So remember, we talked about this would be like 1 slice out of 9 slices, 1 out of 8, 1 out of 6. Well, 6 is going to have the biggest slices, and you get one of those biggest slices. So you would want to be sitting at this table right here, because 1/6 is greater than 1/9 and 1/8. Okay, number 4. Sammy's mother bought 2.5 pounds of blueberries on Monday. Sammy ate 1/4 of the blueberries before he went to bed. How many pounds of blueberries did Sammy eat? So we see that 1/4 of again. That should trigger in our mind, okay, we are multiplying, because when we multiply by a fraction, it actually divides it up into fourths for us. So we should be thinking, I'm actually going to write this down here, or over here to the side. 2.5 times 1/4. But we need to make 2.5 improper, so 2 times 2 plus that 1 gives us 5/2 times 1/4, which gives us the 5/8. So he ate 5/8 of a pound of blueberries. Okay, then it says how many pounds of blueberries were left over. So that's very similar to the last question that they asked about the wire. So leftover means to subtract. So he had 2.5 pounds, but he ate 5/8 of a pound. So once again, you can make this improper and say, okay, I have 5/2 minus 5/8, but because these denominators are not the same, you cannot subtract. So we're going to make them the same. So I know I can multiply 2 by 4 to get 8. So I'm going to change this to 8. So I also need to multiply this by 8, which gives me 28, and I'm going to subtract 5/8, which leaves me with 15/8. And if I simplify that, that gives me 1 7/8. So that is how much blueberries are left over, is 1 7/8. Okay, part C. On Tuesday, Sammy ate 1/3 of the leftover blueberries. How many pounds of blueberries did Sammy eat? Well, you should see that 1/3 of, once again, triggering in your brain, multiply. Okay, so we are going to, it's of the leftover blueberries, which is your answer here. So you have 1 7/8 times 1/3. But once again, we need to make this improper. 1 times 8 is 8 plus 7. So you have 15/8 times 1/3, which gives you 15/24. Okay, the next question says, which you could simplify. They both can be divided by 3 if you wanted to, which gives you 5/8. Okay, did Sammy eat more blueberries on Monday or Tuesday? Well, if you look, he ate 5/8 here and 5/8 here, so he ate the same amount each night. Question 5. List the fractions order from least to greatest. Explain your reasoning, or just show your work. Showing your work is explaining your reasoning. So I recommend setting up your number line using those benchmark fractions. So we have 0, 1/2, and 1 whole. So first off, 5/8. 5/8 is going to be a little greater than 1/2 because I know that 4/8 is 1/2. So 4/8 equals exactly 1/2. But I have 5/8, so I know this is going to be greater, so I'm going to place it there. 2/9 is less than 1/2 because 1/2 of 9 is 4.5. So 2/9 is closer to 1, so I'm going to write it over here. Remember, this doesn't need to be exact. This is just work to help you. 8/10 is going to be close to a whole because you're only 2 pieces away from having a whole amount. And 6/12 is exactly 1/2 because 6 is 1/2 of 12. So you already have it in order if you set up your number line. So you have 2/9, 6/12, 5/8, and 8/10. And that is your answer. Okay, next, compare each pair of fractions using the less than, greater than, or equal to symbol. Explain your reasoning. So we have 4/5 and 7/15. So you could do this one or two ways. You can make equivalent denominators, or you can simply benchmark them. So 4/5 is almost a whole, where 7/15 is close to 1/2. So 4/5 is greater. If you wanted to make them common denominators, you could say 4/5 is equivalent to 15 times 3 times 3, which is 12/15. So 12/15 is greater than 7/15. Okay, 5/10 and 8/16, you should know these are both equal. They're both 1/2, sorry. This would be exactly 1/2, and this would also be exactly 1/2. Next, you have 4/8 and 7/14. They are both actually 1/2 as well. Exactly. So they are also equal. Okay, question number 9. We are going to calculate the value of each percent mentally using your knowledge of benchmarks. So first think about 100% of 400. And if you can't do it mentally, go ahead and set up your part over whole equals percent out of 100. So we're looking for the part in all of these. So I don't know what the part is. I know the whole amount is 400, and if I want to know 100%, that you can tell that this is times 4 and this is times 4. Okay, so obviously 100% of 400 would be 400. Think about money. If you are given 100% of $400, you get all of that money. So 50% of 400, you should think 50% is half. Like if you make a 50% on a test, you got half of the questions right. So that would be 200. But if you're not sure, once again, set it up. 400 equals 50 over 100 times 4, and then 50 times 4 gives us the 200. 25% of 40. Same thing again. 400 over 25 out of 100 times 4 times 4. Oh, that gives me 100. And then if you think about, well, 50% right here was 200, and to get from 50% to 10% divide by 5, do the same thing to 200, divide that by 5, and you get 40. Okay, and then if you think about, oh, well, 10% to 5% is divide by 2, so 40 divided by 2 is 20. And then if you think to get from 100% down to 1% is divide by 100, I can divide 400 by 100, which gives me 4. But for all of these, even for the 1%, you can set up your ratio. 1% out of 100, you're trying to get to 400, times 4, times 4, gives you 4 as your answer. Okay, last part. What is 15% of each restaurant check? Explain how you calculated your answer. Round the answer to the nearest hundredths place. Okay, so we have $36. So remember, when we're finding a percent of something, we can say $36 times, and we're going to change 15% to a decimal, which we know we can move the decimal twice, which gives us 15 hundredths. Or think of it, 15% is 15 out of 100. So you have 15 hundredths, and we're just going to drop the zeros. 5 times 6 is 30, carry the 3. 5 times 3 is 15 with the 8. And then drop the zeros again. 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 3 is 3. Zeros, 8 plus 6 is 14, carry that 1, gives me 5. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 places behind the decimal, so you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 places behind the decimal. So that would round to $5.40 because we're talking about money. Okay. For $18.24, we're going to do the exact same thing. Going to multiply that by that 15. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 2 is 10 plus the 12. 5 times 8 is 40 plus that 1. And 5 times 1 is 5 plus that 4 is 9. Placeholder, 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. 0, 6, 3, 17, and 2. And once again, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is what it would be, but we have to think about it. It said round to the hundredths. So remember, ones or tenths, hundredths. So what does the 6 tell the 3 to do? It's going to round it up. So your answer would actually be $2.74. If you have any questions on 1 through 10, let me know at school and I'll be more than happy to help you. Stay tuned for the follow-up videos for the rest of the review. Don't forget to study.